Jim Havens. Thank you for listening to the Station of the Cross, proclaiming the fullness of truth with clarity and charity.
Heard around the world on your Android and Apple mobile devices.
The Simple Truth, rising up to explore the difficult topics of real life. Join us as we proclaim the good, the true, and the beautiful with the simple truth of Jesus Christ and His Holy Catholic Church through Scripture, tradition, and the Catechism. And now, your host, Jim Havens.
Great to be back with you on The Simple Truth, where we proclaim the life-giving reality of Jesus and His Catholic Church. We consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong heart of St. Joseph. It is Current Events Wednesday, and our guest today is Kristine Mauss, a Catholic homeschooling mother of 4. She shared some of her testimony with us back in February, which people loved and gave us lots of great feedback on. You can go back and find that if you wish. I highly recommend it. Kristine was also recently featured on the Mass of the Ages, and the description on the website for Mass of the Ages at theliturgy.org reads as follows: Mass of the Ages, a documentary trilogy that explores the richness of the traditional Latin Mass through stunning cinematography and inspiring stories. But it's not just 3 beautiful films, it's also an investigation into the surprising events that led to the creation of the new Mass. Mass of the Ages will give you a deep appreciation for your Catholic faith. End of quote. If you were able to catch it, it premiered on the Feast of the Assumption of Our Lady, premiered August 15th, only a little over a week ago, and was a great blessing, I know, to so many who were able to see that. Kristine Mauss, thank you for being back with us. How are you today?
I am great. Thank you for having me.
Great. Well, want to share just a little bit here on how Mass of the Ages is interspersed with Kristine's story surrounding the death of her husband Michael about exactly 1 year ago now, and how the traditional Latin Mass has been such a great blessing to her, especially in helping her to really engage her vocation as mother to her 4 children. We're going to get into a lot of that with Kristine, a lot of great stuff today with her on the traditional Latin Mass, engaging the call to holiness, fulfilling the responsibilities of vocation, much more. But first, as we always do on Wednesday Current Events, it's important that we lead off by always remembering that the number one news story today that ought to be reported on is going unreported by all the networks today and every day, and that is the ongoing daily government-sanctioned, government-protected, government-funded mass murder of innocent children in the wombs of their mothers. These are real people being murdered by the thousands today and every day in our nation, which also means the mass exploitation of pregnant moms in need for profit by the lie of abortion. In terms of the loss of human life, we're talking about at least a 9/11 every day in the U.S. Now imagine 3,000 of any other category of persons being murdered in a given day in our nation, and it going unreported by the media and even mostly ignored by the churches. And then imagine if that was happening every day, and you begin to understand something of the insane reality in which we find ourselves. According to a July 2020 article in The Lancet, we have a global death toll from abortion of 73.3 million children annually, which is over 200,000 preborn children being murdered worldwide every day. It is essential that we put great effort into breaking through our own desensitization to this massive evil. We have to face reality on this and so much more. We must live, proclaim, and push forward the vision that every innocent human being without exception has a right to life. Even an atheist still ought to have the basic moral sense to see the evil of killing an innocent child. For those who believe in Jesus and His Catholic Church, we have the additional benefit of crystal clear, authoritative, magisterial teaching on this, which truly gives us absolutely no place to hide in treating those in the womb as any less valuable than us. Catechism of the Catholic Church 2270, quote, "Human life must be respected and protected absolutely from the moment of conception, meaning fertilization. From the very first moment of his existence, a human being must be recognized as having the rights of a person, among which is the inviolable right of every innocent human being to life, end of quote. Also, if you've experienced abortion in some way as a mother, father, sibling, grandparent, etc., there are some great people, great resources available to help you in your healing process. Know that we love you. You are not alone. Go to lovewillendchildkilling.com. Click on the healing tab for more information there. So we always begin that way on Wednesday. Kristine, as you hear all that, I guess what stirs up and anything that you'd like to say to the audience about this daily mass murder of the preborn that is widely going unreported and ignored.
Right. I think the word that struck me when you were talking was the word desensitization. I think what many people are going through now is this waking up of things in the world, issues such as abortion, things that are happening all around us, things that we might have either ignored, been ignorant to, shoved under the rug because it's too difficult to think about. But I think this inner stirring and inner restlessness in just humanity is really occurring right now. And something like abortion is being brought to the forefront, just like all of these things that we're questioning in our own lives of, okay, this is the way things have been. This is how I've always known the world, that abortion has always been legal. You know, this is how I've done X, Y, Z, whether, you know, it's a different topic. And we're waking up to, wait a minute, let's look at the fruits of what's happening and what's going on. And let's see that we're really just, we're in a world, we're in a church, we're in a state of being that's falling apart. And all of these things that we just shoved under the rug, we can't do that anymore because, again, we're waking up to out of this coma and this sleep of, okay, yeah, this is how things have been, but is this how things should be? You know, you're talking about people who've experienced abortion or experienced a way of life, and just we choose things because we think it's the better path, and then we wake up and realize, wait a minute, there is another way, and I am deeply hurting because of choices or things that I've been doing or things that I've been involved in, and seeking the healing and seeking a different way.
Yeah, well said. And, we're going to talk a lot today, I think, about the good news, the great news, the amazing news that is before us in terms of Jesus and his Catholic Church. And the traditional Latin Mass is such an opportunity for us to speak of that. But we got to stick with the bad news a little bit longer here. And that is the fact that we have a massive crisis of faith in our dioceses and in our parishes. A 2019 Pew survey found that nearly 70% of Catholics in the U.S. reject the doctrine of transubstantiation. So clearly we're in an epidemic of sacrilege being committed at nearly every parish in every diocese. As you go to Mass and everybody's receiving Holy Communion, how many of those people are actually in a state of sanctifying grace? How many are receiving in mortal sin? And it's not even being addressed by the pastor, by the bishop. So this is a reality that we find ourselves in. And let me just lay out the numbers real quick here in terms of the Latin Mass and the Novus Ordo, the new order of the Mass, which is most widely the one that people are familiar with now, the one in the vernacular in English, the one where the priest is on the other side of the altar facing the people, no altar rail, communion in the hand, all of this. And so let's just lay out the numbers here. One national survey found that only 2% of Latin Mass attendees approve of contraception versus 89% of those who attend the Novus Ordo. On approval of abortion, the difference was 1% of Latin Mass attendees in approval of abortion versus 51% of those who attended the Novus Ordo. On so-called gay marriage, the split is 2% versus 67%. The same survey found Latin Mass parishioners have on average nearly 60% larger family sizes, donate on average 5 times more, attend weekly Mass at 4.5 times the rate of Catholics who attend the Novus Ordo, Another survey found that among young adults aged 18 to 39, 98% who attend the Latin Mass report going every Sunday. And of these 90% of these younger Catholics were not raised attending the Latin Mass. And a plurality of all of this 90% that are now attending the Latin Mass who didn't grow up in the Latin Mass, 35% cited reverence as what prompted them to attend the traditional Latin Mass. According to a 2018 Gallup poll, which showed dramatic declines in weekly Mass attendance across all Catholics, among all Catholics, the sharpest decline was the 21 to 29-year-old demographic, which was 73% in 1955 in terms of how many of these 21 to 29-year-olds were attending Mass, 73% in 1955, and that's now dropped to 25% in 2017, and the decline continues. So we see that this massive crisis in faith, and we see it very dramatically represented when we talk about those who are attending the traditional Latin Mass and those who are attending the Novus Ordo. We can get into some of the differences as we go today. But Kristine, what jumps out to you as you think about the numbers, you think about this crisis of faith and the distinction here between those attending the traditional Latin Mass and those attending the Novus Ordo?
Well, what jumps out to me is all the things, the different statistics that you were just listing. I heard a lot of those in 2019. And I am the type of person where the phrase, "you shall know them by their fruits," is always at the forefront of my mind. And I think that's something that I'd like to dive into a little bit in regards to these statistics and my own family and producing the fruits I wanted in myself and my children.
Absolutely. Yeah, when we get back, we are going to give Kristine ample time to do that, to dive into all of that for us and to lay it out. And there's a lot that we're going to get to today. And again, we're going to get, I think, to some very, very beautiful things today. But we have to be real about the reality in which we find ourselves. Jesus is still coming to us. He's still coming on this rescue mission for our hearts, for our souls, for our lives. But we have to desire him. And we have to believe that the bad news is real if we're going to accept that there's a Savior who has come for us. We'll be right back on The Simple Truth. Stay tuned.
This is Franciscan Media's Saint of the Day for August 25th. Today we celebrate Saint Louis of France. Though crowned at 12, Louis did not rule until he turned 21. At 19, he married Marguerite of Provence, with whom he had 11 children. During Louis's reign, France built great Gothic cathedrals, universities, churches, libraries, hospitals, and orphanages. A man of the people, he united the lords, townfolk, peasants, priests, and knights of France by the force of his personality and holiness. After the violence of previous reigns, he brought the nation peace and justice. Every day he invited 13 special guests from among the poor to dine with him. Strong-willed, strong-minded, and devoted to the humble folk of the Lord, he kept lists of the needy in every province of his dominion. As a young man, Louis sailed on a crusade to the Holy Land. His army was victorious at Damietta, but ultimately gave up the city and paid a ransom. Louis stayed in Syria for 4 years. He returned there in 1267 to lead another crusade against the Muslims. With his army decimated by disease, the king died on foreign soil at the age of 41. He was canonized in 1294. There's more about the saints along with inspiration and Catholic resources at our website, saintoftheday.org. From Franciscan Media, this has been Saint of the Day.
There's so much confusion in our world today over what love is. By displaying a Catholic radio bumper magnet on your car, you'll help others understand love as designed by God. Order your free bumper magnets at thestationofthecross.com. We'd be happy to send bumper magnets for your listening area so that others can come to know the Lord. That's thestationofthecross.com. Thank you for sharing Catholic radio on the road.
Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, Kristine Mauss. She is a Catholic homeschooling mother of 4. She was also recently featured on the Mass of the Ages. Mass of the Ages, you can find it at theliturgy.org. You can also just search it online on YouTube or wherever else you find videos. You should be able to find it there as well. Highly recommend watching this video, Mass of the Ages. Here's a quick clip, and then Kristine is going to share for us some of the fruits of what she has found in the traditional Latin Mass. But here it is, clip 1.
3 or so years ago, just going to Mass and sensing that, okay, is this it? Is there something more? And seeing our children hit the age where the influence of Michael and I was still important, but the influence of the people that they were around was going to be almost more important. And my daughter was 11 at the time, entering preteen years, and really looking around and saying, she doesn't have any friends that are Catholic. Okay, she's in religious education, but she's the only one who knows her Hail Mary. That's great.
All right, Kristine. So there's a little bit from the film, you sharing your story there. What else do you want to share with us here about how you found the traditional Latin Mass and what it has meant to you and to the life of your family?
Right, perfect clip. Actually, even leading to what I was saying before the break, because all of those things that you had listed were things that were in the forefront of my mind and my late husband's mind. In 2019, we were kind of going through this great restlessness in our life and our family, and we were ready to shake things up. For a couple of years, we were going to Mass and saying, okay, I have hit the ceiling in my faith somehow. And I'm the type of person, I don't like being stuck. I like to continue growing and going deeper, especially in my faith. And my oldest daughter at the time was 11, and she was entering preteen years, and seeing, okay, what fruits do I want in my own children as they grow up? I knew the statistics that 8 out of 10 young Catholics that were my age were no longer attending church. So the statistics were going to be even more sobering for my children's generation. And so saying, okay, doing what I'm doing, this is what I'm going to get. We need to change things in our family. If we want our children to grow up Catholic, which means growing up in love with the Lord, in love with the sacraments, growing up wanting them to implement this way of life and this religion and this faith into their own life, into their own vocations. And so looking at fruits of anything is incredibly important, because our Lord says you shall know them by their fruits, right? A good tree cannot produce bad fruit, and vice versa. And so we needed to have a foundation that was producing the fruits that we wanted to see in our marriage and our family and in our children. So we thought, okay, how do we shake this up? And so the one thing that my husband had actually been attending, I didn't know we had a traditional Latin Mass in our area, but he had been for a little while been going to confession there, and I thought, I want to try veiling. It was just a thought that popped into my head. I thought, okay, if by changing something externally, will that affect me internally? That, I guess, was the thesis that I didn't even know I was thinking of. I just thought, okay, we need to switch something up. And will it affect our hearts and souls and children? And so we decided as a family in July of 2019 to attend our first traditional Latin Mass. And it was a low Mass. We sat about halfway back. I explained it a little bit in the film. And I thought, okay, I don't really know what the kids are going to think of this. I was going in with a very open mind. We had actually attended a Latin Mass when we were first married, my husband and I, but it was more of kind of a stereotypical, I don't know, I wasn't in the right place. I didn't vibe with the people or the environment. It was just something that, no, not for me. So here we were back again, and it was a completely different experience. We got in the car, and Maximilian, I said this in the film, he goes, Mom, does God like that Mass more? And I said, well, why? He goes, well, because I felt God there. And the kids were just ranting and raving and going on and on about what they felt. And so we had continued veiling back at our Novus Ordo, and my daughter and I. And then it was a couple of months later that Michael had a seizure and was diagnosed with brain cancer. And then a couple of months after that, we had gone back to the Latin Mass, and we went to the Rorate Caeli Advent, candlelit, early morning, 6 a.m. Mass in honor of our Blessed Mother. And it was so stunning. It was candles and reverence. And here we were, my husband sitting next to me, ravaged by brain cancer and brain injuries and tumors and treatment and things going wrong. And here we were sitting in a pew at Mass with our candles, and this incredibly beautiful liturgy was unfolding in front of us. And there was something that was just stirred in me that, oh goodness, I need to be here. And so we thought, okay, we'll make the transition over the next number of months. We were very invested in our Novus Ordo community for a very long time. So to think of breaking those ties was difficult. But long story short, our youngest son was in First Communion prep. And I was frustrated with the First Communion prep, I will not lie, at our Novus Ordo. It was just a matter of kind of checking off boxes. You go to class and then you receive First Communion. There was nothing beyond that. And so we gave him the choice. We said, where would you like to receive your First Communion? The church we were attending or at St. Joseph, the Latin Mass? He goes, St. Joseph. So we said, okay. And we signed up and we became parishioners. And it was very providential because it was a few months after that Mass was shut down. And so we were established in this parish with our new pastor, and even doing dry Mass and watching it online at home. We were going through these storms in our life of Michael and brain cancer and things going wrong, and yet discovering this whole new world of faith in Catholicism. Our roots were sinking deep as we needed the water of Christ in that period. And I don't know, again, I said this in the film, I don't know where we would be without traditional Catholicism, because what it did is it started reorienting our life as Michael was getting sicker, as I was having to be his full-time caretaker, as the kids were walking on this journey of losing their dad slowly, and then all of a sudden. And then in the wake of the loss of him, going to Mass, when I walk through the doors of St. Joseph, I'm walking into the Ark. It was like I'm walking into Noah's Ark. And that's how I felt every single time, that I was there, that I was buffered and protected, that I was there to worship God. So it started off as kind of like this, wow, I am being so spiritually fed here. And then as it slowly started to reorient my life and I'm coming out of the fog of grief, I see that, wait a minute, not only is it reorienting my life, but it's reorienting my view of God. Because as the priest turned his back to me, and this whole way of the liturgy is from me up to God and God back, it's like, okay, that's not how I've been worshiping God. I've been worshiping God as, oh, God will meet me where I'm at. And yes, that's true. God will meet me where I'm at. But God was now is like, okay, I was created to worship God, not figure out how God can come down to my level. God wants to raise me up to his level. And so I'm continuing to unpack traditional Catholicism and how it is continuing to seep into all of these different nooks and crannies of myself as a woman, a Christian, a mother with my kids. So in hindsight, God knew what he was doing by plopping us there just 2 months before a seizure, and in the wake of the world now and the craziness, and just, I know that my kids would not be as stable as they are, and myself, I would not have the peace and faith that I do without traditional Catholicism.
Yeah.
So
Awesome. Yeah, let me go to the next clip. This is you talking about really your number one priority in life. For me, this was maybe the strongest point of the entire film. I just think so inspiring for people to understand what it means to live one's vocation as a husband and father, as a wife and a mother. What is that all about? And I think you really get at the heart of it right here, very simply. Here it is, clip number 2.
I mean, everything that we were doing in life was on the table to examine, and that included where we were going to Mass and how we were living our faith, especially. Now, I know at some point it's out of my hands, and it's their choice, and it's their decision, and I remind them that, and I tell them that. But to walk my children into heaven however I can is the number one priority of my life.
All right, so that line there, to walk my children into heaven however I can, is the number one priority of my life. There might be a lot of people that would say that, that would maybe even believe that is the number one priority of their life, but there's really some meat on the bone when you're saying this, right? We're seeing clips of your children praying the rosary as a family, sharing intention, sharing a point to meditate on, your sons as altar servers there. This sense that you really are striving to, certainly no one's perfect, but we're striving to fulfill the responsibilities of our vocation, of your vocation as wife and mother here. This is the sense of what it means to really be a mother. And I guess I'd also like you to speak to that sense that, look, you lost your husband to a horrible death in terms of, the sudden illness that came upon him and all of this that has occurred. By God's grace, you guys have able to bring forth the good in the midst of all of this by sticking with him and allowing him to have his way in all of it. But I would say, you could look at somebody and like you and say, well, she has every excuse to make all kinds of excuses for herself why she can't be this kind of a mother, why she can't be so engaged. And so that's what I love about your example, your witness, your story, is that for others who don't have that same challenge, you really ought to be incredibly inspiring to them, because they ought to see you and say, well, look at how she's engaging with every excuse not to. Wow, that really is calling me on. I better step it up and start striving to get going, because I think even in the Catholic world, there's a lot out there online with Catholic moms and stuff like this that it sort of just gives this idea of like, we're all a mess and it's okay, and sort of just lowers the standard. But you're really raising the standard here. No, this is our vocation. Let's really engage it. Anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, I think there's two things. We can chat more after the break, but they would probably be my experience in walking my husband to meet his Creator has formed my experience in walking my children, and also the experience of God's grace in the dark moments when I've just wanted to give up, and how cooperating with that grace has really propelled me on further to doing things that I couldn't do on my own. Yes, yeah, we need to hear about that when we get back, that primacy of God's grace. He's there lavishing that grace on us, to each and every one of us, everybody who's listening, watching right now. The grace is being poured out. Are we open to it? Are we willing to participate with it, especially when it gets us uncomfortable? He's going to call us out of our comfort zones. We're going to be right back with Kristine Mauss. Stay tuned.
Here at the Station of the Cross, we proudly bring the truths of the Catholic faith to countless listeners through radio and mobile devices, and we're grateful for the feedback we've received.
Catholic radio has just been a lifesaver for me. I start my day with it. I listen to it all day long as much as I can. There's always people calling in with people who've lost children, and I love what everyone has to say and the advice of the Catholic Church and how to deal with suffering. It has given me the strength to get through the day and to get out of bed each morning. I am very grateful for it.
Catholic radio to me has been very informative on my religion. It has informed me of many things that I wasn't aware of or should have been aware of, and I've enjoyed it very much listening to it.
If you've been blessed by listening to the Station of the Cross, let us know. Call 1-877-888-6279, extension 112. Then share your testimonial with us.
The Station of the Cross thanks our financial supporters who have enabled us to broadcast Catholic programs for more than 20 years. As a nonprofit lay organization not affiliated with your diocese, our apostolate is listener-supported. Through your generosity, we're able to inspire countless listeners with the gospel message and help lead them to a parish to be spiritually nourished by the sacraments. Thank you for your continued support, and may God bless you and your family. We offer several ways to view our programming grid, including at our website, thestationofthecross.com, and on our iCatholic Radio app. Just click the menu icon in the top left portion of our app and select the link to our programming grid. That's at thestationofthecross.com and on our free iCatholic Radio app for Android and Apple mobile devices.
Truth Current Events Wednesday. Our guest today, Kristine Mauss, a Catholic homeschooling mother of 4, recently featured on Mass of the Ages. Kristine, before the break, talking about vocation and fulfilling the vocation, stepping into that. Feel free to continue on.
Yeah. So I think there's 2 points to that, just talking about walking my children to heaven and currently living that with lots of help. The first was having to actually physically do that with my late husband. We were very lucky in that we had time to prepare for his death. He was declining over a number of months and then was put on hospice and got to spend his last 6 weeks on hospice at home. And walking that experience of being able to bring him the sacraments, the apostolic pardon, him wearing his scapular, the spiritual warfare, all of these things, rosaries, divine mercies, praying with him, people visiting, helping prepare him, his body and his soul in whatever way that I could to meet God. And as a wife, as a spouse, that's what we say on the altar. I mean, we hope for 80 years or 60 years or 40 years, but you never think you're going to get 14. And yet here we were in sickness and in health till death do us part. And I had to live that with him. And it was incredibly difficult and incredibly holy and incredibly beautiful. And it's probably the greatest experience of my life. And all of that. So I think, and then losing him detached me. I remember thinking, okay, there's nothing more in this world that I want. My spouse is gone. All the attachments that I had were severed. Hopes, dreams, things that I longed for, things that I wanted. I mean, some of those things, that's just grief. I think some of those things are starting to come back. I mean, hopes and dreams are good things, but also just this sense of, okay, Lord, you've severed all my attachments to this earth. And now I look at my kids and say, okay, now I've walked Michael there and I continue to pray for him and his soul. Now, how do I get my kids? And again, like I said in the film, ultimately, yes, it is their choice. And I do tell them that. We're sitting at the dinner table and I say, yeah, Mom plans on going to heaven. I'm going to do everything I can to die in a state of grace. So I hope you're there with me. Little mom guilt. But I think just talking about even the experience of desolation, there have been great periods of desolation and wanting to abandon God completely, my Catholic faith completely. I mean, I remember even this past winter, spring, of having one of those moments where I would say, okay, I'm going to choose to be done with this. The dark, it's too much. And saying, it's in those moments of desolation that I've realized, I've had this experience multiple times, where when we choose God with a complete act of the will, he ultimately rewards that with incredible grace. And so I've experienced that a few times now, where I've been in this period of wanting to abandon him completely, choosing him through that, and then he rewards it with this grace. And so when I say it's grace that's enabling me to do this, it's my cooperation with it, but it's also very much God inspiring my heart and mind and choices and leading me to these, again, like he led us to the Latin Mass, like he's leading us to these various things that can hopefully help me get my kids to heaven.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, outstanding. Yeah, as I was watching the film Mass of the Ages, again, you can find it online, Mass of the Ages, highly recommend it. The phrase that kept going through my mind, and I think it's even maybe their motto, at least part of it, lex orandi, lex credendi, lex vivendi. The law of praying is the law of believing, is the law of living, and this sense that it all goes together. And this witness that you were giving there, even in, if you could speak to this some, there's a priest in there in the film where he talks about a young person who had died, and they wanted this. The sister wanted a celebratory funeral mass, and he said, "Well, what would you take away from that? You take away this belief that all you have to do to go to heaven is to die." So you can see that the law of praying, you're not praying in the right way, celebrating and not praying for the person who has died, and and all of that. So the praying not quite right is going to lead to the belief being not quite right. And then how are they going to live if they think that all they have to do to go to heaven is die? There is no such thing as mortal sin and hell and all of this. It's going to be a mess. Right? But you chose a requiem mass for your husband, Michael, and really sought a healthy, accurate view of death for yourself, for your children, according to what the Catholic Church actually teaches. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I can speak to that from both kind of a personal experience with that, and then also starting off kind of with the greater thing about Catholicism that has always set it apart is this evangelistic nature of, we are not guaranteed salvation. We work out our salvation with fear and trembling, as St. Paul says. Those who make it are few and the way is narrow. And that is not to instill fear in people, but perhaps maybe a healthy fear of, again, what Father Jim Jackson said in the film is, okay, is all we have to do to go to heaven die? I mean, no, that's not what we believe as Catholics. And unfortunately, that notion is seeped into the greatest form of worship as Catholics, into the liturgy. And in looking at the Requiem Mass and looking at the prayers in the Requiem Mass, looking at the Dies Irae, I mean, if you want to meditate on something, go to the Latin Requiem Mass and read the sequence that is said before the Gospel. And it is stunning and it is haunting. And it is sung, and it is incredibly powerful. And so, again, not only in the liturgy, but even just in my own personal experience of the time before Michael died and the time after, is that, yes, I long to be in heaven, and I hope and pray that we all make it. But there is also a period of great purification. And that was something that I know Michael was struggling with spiritually before he died, just this in ways that I can't explain. I experienced it after he passed away, of just the fire of purification of God's mercy and justice. But yeah, the way we pray influences the way we live, the way we think, and that is very, very, very true. Very true.
Yeah, let's go to a clip that fleshes that out a little bit as well. This is Bishop James Conley, Bishop of the Diocese of Lincoln, Nebraska. Clip number 4, here it is.
Unless you experience the transcendent God in right worship, then you really are not drawn fully into the mystery. I think that you will not stay unless, you grow in that love for the Mass. The Mass is everything for Catholics. It's the representation of the sacrifice of Christ on Calvary every time. And the more beautiful it is, and the more uplifting and transcendent it is, then I think the more people are drawn into it and are converted. The conversion goes deeper and deeper.
Mm-hmm. The conversion goes deeper and deeper. And there's a sense in this film, I mean, it really is an introduction for many, a beautiful introduction to the traditional Latin Mass. But there's also a sense that coming up in the next episode, it says, and this is going to come out later in the year, part 2, according to the website, says it's going to be an eye-opening investigation into the concilium. The concilium was the committee that implemented the changes to the liturgy after Vatican II. It says you will be shocked to realize the changes that took place that were never mentioned by the Second Vatican Council. You will discover a priest named Annabelle Bunini, who was the architect of it all. And then a couple of quotes. One is from the Constitution on the Sacred Liturgy at the Second Vatican Council, which says, quote, "There must be no innovations unless the good of the church genuinely and certainly requires them." And then another quote by that same bishop, Bishop Conley of Lincoln, Nebraska, who says the Second Vatican Council fathers would have been shocked. Presumably he's talking about the changes that have been made, the innovations that have been made in the Novus Ordo. Look, there's a reverent way to be able to celebrate the Novus Ordo. But what the reality is, if you go to most parishes, and this is across the United States, certainly in the Northeast, where I've had a lot of time living in the Northeast in my life, it's an absolute mess. There is a vast a deficit of reverence, a deficit of really celebrating the Novus Ordo in any way that would be considered reverent. It's just rife with abuses all over the place. And so we have to be honest about this and real about this. And what are the ramifications of that? And when you look at the numbers of those who are being faithful and those who are being unfaithful, those who believe what the church teaches and those who don't, we have to be real that all of these abuses that have been taking place, there's a lack of reverence there ought to be reverence there. And the fact that there isn't, what are the ramifications? They are bad. They are evil. They are not good. And so that's why the traditional Latin Mass is, people are finding it and saying, this is how I'm supposed to pray, in terms of it doesn't have all of that nonsense that's distracting me from being able to actually worship God. I want to just get in one more point, and then Kristine, have you comment here. But this is from the Catechism of the Catholic Church 2097. And it says, to adore God is to acknowledge in respect and absolute submission the nothingness of the creature, who would not exist but for God. To adore God is to praise and exalt him and to humble oneself, as Mary did in the Magnificat, confessing with gratitude that he has done great things and holy is his name. The worship of the one God sets man free from turning in on himself, from the slavery of sin and the idolatry of the world. We are made to worship God like that. And when we are not worshiping God, and we've got all these abuses and distractions and all of these problems, there's going to be real consequences for that, and we're seeing them. Kristine, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I go back to my own life, and I have had the interesting privilege of experiencing many different things liturgically. I was an altar girl growing up. I think I did liturgical dance once, but we need to keep that on the down low. I have been to incredibly reverent Novus Ordos. I have been to the Novus Ordo said in Latin. I have been now to the traditional Latin Mass. I've been to everything in between. And again, I look at the fruits of all those different time periods of my life, and I compare my own life to when I was going to the Novus Ordo, the type of woman, wife, person, the type of creature that I was to God, how I thought I was worshiping him. And in fact, I was worshiping I was not worshiping God. I have been awoken now being in traditional Catholicism. I think I said this to myself in Holy Week this past year is, oh my goodness, I feel like I am worshiping God for the first time in my life. And that was very eye-opening to me that, okay, now I see what right worship is. To worship God fully and completely, the highest form of worship is the sacrifice of Jesus. And that is what is being represented in the Mass. And when Bishop Conley talks about how the Mass is everything for us as Catholics, that's why I don't love the argument that the Novus Ordo, well, it's valid. Well, yeah, would you just want a marriage? Well, my marriage is valid. I mean, don't you want a marriage that's thriving and beautiful and happy and joyful and reverent towards one another? I mean, I don't want a marriage that's just valid. And so that argument doesn't really fly with me. And I mean, I think we all need to have a great dose of humility and say, what has been going on is not working. If you go to a company and you see that the company is losing 80% of their profits over 50 years, you're going to say the company just needs to start selling something else or go back to what they were selling. And that's how we need to look at faith as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and for those that do attend the Novus Ordo, and maybe you're at a place where it is being reverently said, well, thanks be to God for the reverence that is being put into it. But for many people, most people, they are not experiencing that. And I do know one good place up in the Diocese of Rochester where we found in our journey towards the traditional Latin Mass kind of an intermediary stop, which was Novus Ordo, very reverently celebrated with the altar rail, with the Ad Orientem. And, that priest up there is doing a great job, Father Bon Signori. So keep up the great work. We're going to be right back on The Simple Truth. Stay tuned.
Prayer in time of affliction. Blessed, O Lord, be thy name forever. Who has permitted this affliction to come upon us? We cannot escape it, but must of necessity fly to thee to help us and turn it to our good. Lord, we are now in affliction. Our souls are ill at ease, for we are much troubled with this present suffering. Let it please thee, O Lord, to deliver us, for poor wretches that we are. What can we do without thee? Thy mighty hand can do all things. Give us patience, O Lord, and strength and peace. Help us, O God, and we will not fear, no matter how grievously we may be afflicted. O Lord, thy will be done. Welcome be the will of God. Sacred Heart of Jesus, we place our trust in thee. Amen.
Hello, this is Father Frank Pavone of Priests for Life. Our Lord has promised us, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there am I in their midst. Why did he say 2 or 3? Because when others show up, we are then able to give ourselves away in love. And that bond of active love between human beings manifests Jesus' presence. This is the basis of a culture of life. This is Father Frank Pavone, National Director of Priests for Life.
Our network-produced shows are some of our most powerful programming, available as podcasts at thestationofthecross.com or for Android and Apple mobile devices on our iCatholic Radio mobile app. Be uplifted in your faith and inspired to spread the good news of Jesus Christ. Listen today at thestationofthecross.com or on our iCatholic Radio mobile app.
Jim Havens here with our guest today, Kristine Mauss. She's a Catholic homeschooling mother of 4, also recently featured on Mass of the Ages. You can find Mass of the Ages at theliturgy.org. Also, you can just search for it on YouTube or anywhere else. There are videos online. You ought to be able to find it and watch it, and make sure that you do so if you have not done so yet. I'm going to play 2 more quick clips here and then get Kristine's comments on them. This is the first one. Who you're going to hear during this clip is going to be Monsignor Eugene Morris, also Bishop Joseph Strickland, and also Dr. Taylor Marshall. Here it is, clip 5.
There was a haughtiness to how I presided. I do it better than this guy, so I'm going to be the one to do it for everybody, and it's really about me, and I want to make sure, again, eye contact, and the homily's well written, and everything's okay. Now I go up to the altar of the Lord, and I ask that the Lord forgive me of my sins, and I'm aware of my unworthiness, and I shouldn't be here. And then when I kiss the altar, I'm aware, and it tells me everything that I'm supposed to do. So it's nothing about me and everything about God.
It was the moment of the consecration. For the first time in my life, I'd said them many times in English, but it was very emotional. I could hardly say the words. And you're whispering, so you didn't have to have a lot of volume, but I could hardly do that. I mean, it was choking me up.
The priest whispers the words of consecration over the host, over the chalice, and then the bell pierces the silence, and you see the host, and then you see the chalice lifted up. And for me, that is the moment in the Mass where I feel in my heart and in my gut, Jesus is here and he died for me.
All right, we're going to hear one more quick clip here. This is also following up on this Dr. Taylor Marshall once more. Here it is, clip 6.
The Eucharist transubstantiation is a diamond, and a diamond can be anywhere. It has the same value, but when you place that diamond in a setting by someone who really knows how to create a proper setting, it allows the light to move through it. It brings out certain features of it. But that setting is the liturgy, and it makes it sparkle. It makes it shine. It makes us appreciate the diamond, the value. And I think when you dole that down, the diamond doesn't change. The diamond's always a diamond, but you maybe don't appreciate it as much. And maybe you don't see the qualities and the magnificence of that diamond. And I think, people who go back to the traditional Latin Mass, there's still the transubstantiation, still the Eucharist, but we see it in a new setting, in a new light. And I think that does strengthen our faith. It really does.
All right, so again, getting at this sense of getting to our own disposition of heart and mind where Jesus is truly at the center of our worship. And what is the setting that helps us to best do that? Transubstantiation is there either way. The Mass is valid either way, but what is the setting that helps us? If you haven't checked out a traditional Latin Mass, might be a good time to find one and check one out. Kristine, it is a difficult time, though, for folks that are learning more about the traditional Latin Mass, finding it, diving into the riches that are there. And I would like to also point out one of the great things about it is the fact that it is universal, right? We've got a universal language in the Latin. We've got a universal way that they're just following the rubrics of the Mass. And so you can go any city, any state, anywhere, any country in the world, you're going to find the Mass that you know. And it's also great for evangelization because I'll tell you what, most men, if you walk into a regular Novus Ordo parish, if they're regular guys in American culture, they're going to walk out of there pretty fast, even if they're trying to find Jesus and they're believing that maybe he's here in the Catholic Church, maybe this transubstantiation thing is real. As soon as they start hearing these awful hymns, these modern hymns that go on, I'll tell you that they're going to be out of there. You're not going to have them around very long. And the church is just hemorrhaging, I think, authentic men over the years because of what has happened to the setting of the Mass and the Novus Ordo being so abused. But I want to get your thoughts on the fact that we are in a rough time where, yes, many are rediscovering this beauty and entering into the Mass more deeply than ever. But at the same time, there's a suppression of the traditional Latin Mass from the church within. And so what have you thought as you've been seeing this, as you've found, as you've been experiencing these great fruits, but then also realizing, well, it seems like a lot of the leaders in the church are mad about the traditional Latin Mass or want to suppress it. Where are you at in your thoughts on that?
I think understanding the great history of the church over the past 100 years is incredibly helpful to put that into context, that Satan found it very difficult to destroy the church from without, so had to go within. And however that infiltration has looked throughout the hierarchy of the church, through various scandals and ideas and thoughts and notions. I mean, I'm not surprised that the traditional Mass is being oppressed. It was a thought that I had early on in my journey of traditional Catholicism, just seeing some foreshadowings in the world of things to come and saying, wait a minute, this is going to be the arm of the church that is going to be oppressed. Because I could see truth in a very clearer way. I mean, we talk about the setting of a diamond. I mean, I could see Christ and God in a clearer way in traditional Catholicism. And that's the point that I want to make, is this isn't just about the Latin Mass. It is about what are the fruits of this liturgy, and that's what's trying to be squashed and oppressed. The fruits of, stronger families, stronger marriages, stronger children, greater holiness, greater love for the Lord, greater worship of God, and that is what is trying to be squashed. And the way to do that is to oppress this liturgy, because this liturgy is forming that in the people that go. And so we need to have a great humility. I think I said this earlier. We need to have humility and say, okay, we don't have everything figured out. That's what Michael and I did. We said, okay, there's something wrong here. We need to shake things up. What we're doing is not working. And we all need to be able to look at ourselves in this world and say, okay, we might have thought we had it figured out, but Lord, what's really going on here? And praying for wisdom is incredibly powerful and important, that God will give us wisdom to know why this liturgy is being oppressed. I think in some ways it is having an opposite effect, because it has brought more spotlight on the traditional liturgy. So there are places where, yes, it is being restricted, but there are also people are saying, wait a minute, the Latin Mass, what's that? Wait a minute, why do they want to get rid of it? Oh, and here's this providential film. What is a Latin Mass? And so I think the Lord can use those things for his benefit. But yeah, I'm not surprised that the traditional liturgy is being squashed, because that's where the fruits are coming from.
Yeah, great points there, and the wisdom on the fact that the target is not on the traditional liturgy itself, but it really on the fruits of it, right? We know that the devil is coming at the family. Like, that is where he's coming, right? The family is in the image of the Trinity, bears the image of the Trinity. I mean, we see how the devil goes after each human being, the value of a human person who is made in the image and likeness of God, with this daily mass murder of abortion, which we started with today, but also he's coming after the family. And if he can get at it this way, then he's coming for it. And so any other encouragement that you have for families to really, I guess, set their eye, fix their gaze on the Lord, and really understand the number one priority of what their vocation is, and really strive to fulfill it. Anything else for us today?
Yeah, I mean, I think for families that both attend the Latin Mass, those who attend the Novus Ordo, I think really we need to reorient our marriages and our families into right worship of God, of placing that we were created to worship God, and we were created to lead one another in worship of God. And if you are in a Novus Ordo and can do that there, if you need to go check out a Latin Mass to help that grow, I would just encourage everybody to just continue wrestling with that notion that we were created to worship God.
Very good. Yes. Kristine Mauss, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And where can people find you? Instagram at Love Kristine Nicole.
Yes,
that's where,
Love Kristine Nicole, or KristineNicole.com.
Okay, terrific. And again, highly recommend Mass of the Ages. Go ahead and find it online. Mass of the Ages. God bless you. The next national